what I want to get at is that it's in our nature to manifest this tension and to live and to embrace this tension between the need for security, to stay put, comfort, safety, and the need for discovery, adventure. In the Alice in Wonderland, where Alice enters the underworld, she encounters the Red Queen, and the Red Queen tells Alice, in my country, you have to run as fast as you can just to stay on the same spot.
Welcome, Philippos, to the Minds podcast. I'm so happy to have you here. For those who don't know, Philippos is an emerging author and an aspiring professional development coach. Philippos, you worked really hard in your early professional career, reaching the Everest, I must say, of every young Cypriot lawyer. Reaching the senior partner position in one of the most prestigious law firms of the island. But soon after reaching the top, you realized that this position was not fulfilling, and you started your own searching. Philippos, I have to say that I'm extremely fascinated about your passion on purpose, vision, engagement at workplace, and most importantly, this constant fight you have to answer this question that has never been answered, the biggest question in the history of mankind: what is happiness? Welcome, Philippos, and I'm hoping for a very insightful discussion.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. It's been a conversation that we have been talking about for quite a few months. Thank you also for the succinct summary or screenshot of my whereabouts to this day. And I'm really fascinated and curious to see where this conversational journey will take us.
So, Philippos, I wanted to start this discussion about a big question I have in my mind. We are constantly bombarded from various angles and from various sources that we should find our drive in life, what motivates us, find your purpose, find your vision, create your vision. So many labels. I'm very confused. What's all that? What's the difference between purpose, vision, drives, motivation?
Well, I'm 44 years old, and believe me, I am still having the same deliberations and thoughts with you. I would say that if we take a step back and we see what we are, is that we are mobile creatures. Think about our physical constitution and our biological nature. We are mobile, bipedal creatures, right? We're not like trees, static in a state of stasis and permanently bolted to the same location. So because of our nature as mobile creatures, our destiny is to keep moving, both physically and psychologically. Physically, self-evidently, historically and evolutionarily, in our quest for food, for sex partners, for shelter, for gratification, for safety. So physically, we have this propensity to move constantly from point A to point B. Point A is always the point of lacking, and point B is the promised land, or the micro promised land, or the point where we believe things will become better, will get better. Point A can be, I am hungry. Point B can be the fridge, where I'm going to find the food. Or point A can be, I feel lonely. And point B can be the point where I will meet my future partner. So, in a nutshell, because we are mobile creatures, our destiny is bound to keep moving, physically and psychologically. Now, if we take that and we parse it apart, it is true that our motivational and perceptual systems lay out the world to us in such a manner as well. We always keep striving. We always keep moving. We have this itch or this urge to keep moving from point A, from the present, to point B, which is something that we perceive to be better.
So you suggest that this inner drive comes from how we call it in Greek is archegona, like
archetypal or primordial
instinct that we had when we used to be in smaller groups as hunters, and we had to move from point A to point B. Exactly. Because if you stay at point A, maybe a tiger will attack you and eat you. So exactly. You had to move and find the next tree or the next small animal that you could hunt.
You are absolutely correct. So there is a tension between two competing needs or values, let's say. The first one is the need for security. So let's assume that 50,000 years ago, our great ancestors were foraging for shelter, and they found this cave where they laid to feel protected from beasts. Okay, so they satisfied their need for security. They found the cave, okay? But at some point, they would have to move, because if they stayed there for long, the predators, the tigers, as you said, that were plentiful, would discover by sense of smell that there were some living creatures in the cave. So they had to move both to keep moving to avoid dangers, but because at some point their energy will run out, they will need food. So there still is this constant tension between the search for security, comfort, zest, and the need for creative exploration. When I say creative exploration, I mean the need to expand to expand our maps so as to find new resources, new avenues of possibility, new caves, so to speak, and to expand the territory in which we manifest our potential. So these are all quite conceptual ideas. What I want to get at is that it's in our nature to manifest this tension and to live and to embrace this tension between the need for security, to stay put, comfort, safety, and the need for discovery, adventure, expansion of our horizons, discovery of new avenues of possibility, new resources, new food, new companions, new tribes, and so on and so forth. So that's the starting point to the question of what should be our purpose, or should we have a purpose? What should be our vision, or should we have a vision? Is that we are mobile creatures by nature. So inevitably, because we are not trees, and trees do not need to move because they become fulfilled through stasis, sunshine, nutrients, water, but we need to move because it's in our nature to move, physically and psychologically. So the physical, of course, is the food, is the finding a sexual partner, finding shelter. The psychological, now this is a point where humanity parted off from its ape ancestors has been the development of the cognitive abilities and the exponential growth of the cognitive abilities of humans, the ability to abstract and to envision, going to vision, and to plan ahead and to become aware of the future as a possibility and a manifestable reality. So this is the starting point. Now, another angle through which to see this discussion and to arrive at the conclusion as to whether and what should be our purpose is the idea that without purpose, the reality that manifests is entropy. So if we don't have purpose, we don't stay still. If we don't have an aim, a place towards to move, okay, a goal or a plan or an envisioned goal, we start to dissipate, to degenerate. Entropy is the idea, is the second law of thermodynamics, which provides that things do not remain stable. They degenerate into chaos, or they atrophy. So energy tends to disperse unless there is positive effort to keep it intact, right? So without purpose, without an aim, without a set of goals, inevitably the situation will not be stasis, but it will be entropy, meaning degeneration, atrophy, losing skills, withering relationships, and the withering of our abilities. In Alice in Wonderland, where Alice enters the underworld, she encounters the Red Queen, and the Red Queen tells Alice, in my country, you have to run as fast as you can just to stay on the same spot. So we need purpose to catch up with a highly entropic world, to catch up with a world that is constantly changing and is pulling us in all different directions. And to avoid getting lost, it is helpful to counter these tendencies with a specific aim. So what should be our aim? That's personal to every person. An aim can be professional. It can be about who I want to become in my workplace. It can be personal, what kind of person I want to be in 10 years or in 20 years. It can be financial. There are aims, micro aims, meta aims, like a unifying vision. It can be anything you want. But the idea is that purpose is somewhere we want to get, or our aim is somewhere we want to get because we believe that that's a worthwhile destination.
So if I could simplify what you have so eloquently have described, purpose is the specific reason or route we're taking to achieve this manifested bigger picture we call vision. So if we are always on the move because it comes from the inside, and we always need to find meaning in our life, to connect with people, to learn and grow, then I don't think it's very difficult. What's very difficult, I think, for people is to label a vision, to give it a name, to give, my vision is A. I think it's multidimensional. And the purpose and the way to achieve that bigger, picture, that so-called vision, it's very hard on people. It's very hard to limit it. Also, it develops over time. Because if you asked me when I was 20 years old, what's your vision? And how are you going to achieve that? And what's your purpose in life? Completely different than now, and maybe completely different in 10 years, because facts change. And when facts change, even behaviors and ideas change.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe even our vision and purpose is also on the move and changes.
You can think of vision and purpose as two terms that you can use interchangeably, okay, to keep things simple. A purpose can be to follow your vision, okay, or your vision can be to manifest your purpose. So let's simplify the conversation. Ideally, your vision should be nested within a term of the character of person you want to build. This is less fluid. So if your vision is about who you want to become, like your ideal self, you are much more likely to remain committed to it. If your vision or your purpose is what kind of abilities you would like to accumulate, okay, this is a nobler vision than what kind of possessions or titles or social emblems you would like to accumulate, for example. I'm not denigrating any of these by any chance, but what I'm saying is that if you want to have a vision or a purpose that will remain fairly consistent, your best bet is to aim at what kind of character you want to become. Your best bet will be what kind of person you would like to become, or do you like to be? And then within that umbrella vision, there you can incorporate micro visions or micro goals, which will be in harmony with that specific vision. So let's say that I would like to be a person of integrity, a person who is productive, and a person who values his family and his community. Okay, that's a vision, a personal vision. Okay, this is abstract and specific enough to keep you properly oriented in life in terms of how you will make certain decisions to remain consistent with that vision. Okay, and within that space, you can then structure your more specific goals in how to get there. And your whole journey towards that vision will help you navigate yourself through your work, through your personal relationships, through your community, and so forth. So the purpose that is related to character and ability is much more consistent than the purpose which is related to material goals or career goals or practical goals. So you should aim for who you want to become rather than what you want to achieve. And once you have that in place, who you want to become as a person, then everything else will be integrated in a more consistent way.
I think you have touched upon a very important area, and the fight between finding a purpose and vision and maintaining our values.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about integrity.
Exactly.
A big value that people want to maintain in their actions, in their daily life, at work, at home, in their relationships, in their community. And I think values, it's a fundamental and constitutional element of framing this vision and this, let's say, path that we want to follow, and how we call it, self-complete.
Self-actualization.
Self-actualization is a proper word, correct. What are the top 3 what are your top 3 values in your personal vision of a good and happy life?
Well, right now I would say that my top 3 values are family, productivity, and engagement. Although productivity and engagement are related. So I would say family, productivity, and social engagement.
Let's start with the first one. You are a father of 3 kids, right?
Yes.
How is it to be a partner in this modern world?
Well, it's very fulfilling and very hard at the same time. And I believe that it helps me remain integrated with the world. So it's a set of obligations, if I may say, that help you remain properly oriented in life. So you are correct that values, if I may add to that, values are the fundamental building blocks of a person's life, or should be the fundamental building blocks of the person's life. And it's really helpful to identify one's values. Some of them are values by choice, and other values, let's say, are come about as features of our temperamental constitution. And some are simply needs that we have. But if we manage to decode our values and to understand because what are values? Values are what we value. If you keep it simply, is what we consider important, is what we consider necessary for us. These are our values. And the values, as you correctly said, will help you decide who you want to become. And the values also depend on your temperamental constitution. You may be a creative person by nature. Okay, you may be high in trade openness, as the psychologists say. If you are temperamentally high in trade openness, it means you are a creative person by nature. So inevitably, you will be a person that is thirsty for adventure, exploration, new ideas. You will be a person that moves in between categories. You will be a person that does not really like a rigid way of life. Okay, so that value of yours will definitely affect the way you plan and execute your life's vision and plan. On the other side, if you are high in what they say trade conscientiousness, which means orderliness, and industriousness, which means hard-working tendency, if you are high in that and low in trade openness, low in creativity, you will be more likely to value stability, conservatism, not in the political sense, safety, limits, boxes, safety. So you will be more attuned to the safety pole of the tension we said before, of the exploration versus safety in dipole. So you will be more attuned to, you'll be looking for safe jobs, stable careers, safe relationships, traditional roles. So your values to a large extent depend on your idiosyncrasy, which is biological in nature. And you may also be high in neuroticism, so negative emotion, as a biological predisposition, which may lead you to value safety more. So our values are highly interlinked with our biological constitution. So we bring it with us. We inherit them. Yeah.
So values are connected. Let's say there is a link with where what you're saying is that if someone values family, as you have said, it's something that comes with you, like you're born with it. Or if someone values being productive, or you said being socially engaged and being curious and want to meet new people, is something predisposed. You cannot, develop it. So would we say that this is the only factor to be taken into account to develop or to realize who are our values? Because in my mind, while it may while I can relate with this approach, I feel that we can take actions and we can decide what we really value. For example, you said family. Some people are born being family oriented, but you have to take actions to be a good parent. Or even if you don't have this, let's say, you're not born with having this value to the extreme, you can, with actions, develop it.
For sure. Values are not static, but they're also not 100% down to our choices. Values also evolve over time. And there is an element of course, there is a notable element of free choice as to what we value and what we choose to value. So there is there is an interplay of our, let's say, of our idiosyncrasy, our temperament, and of our choices. So there is an interplay between our, let's say, our fortune and our aims. We can, of course, aim and we can aim in all sorts of directions. Okay, foundationally, human beings have a very specific set of needs. Okay, we need to feel valued. Okay, so foundationally, our needs, which extrapolate into our values as well, are we need to feel valued, we need to be appreciated. Okay, and we need to feel seen. These are the fundamental three needs that we have. Okay, we need to feel valued. Why? Because we need to feel that we belong somewhere. Whether this is our job, our family, our community, we want to be seen. So we want our efforts to be appreciated. Okay, so this translates in the need for professional development, the need for success, and around this constitution, we can certainly. So values are static, but they are also down to our aims. We can change our values, and our values change as well.
But also, okay, if we, I don't like to simplify all this philosophical discussion. I know it's very difficult to put in simple terms, and if someone could put it, we wouldn't discuss today the philosophies of the ancient Greece and Aristotelous and Plato and all these modern philosophers trying to evolve and decode their work. But okay, if we say we're coming in this world with some inherent values, and if we can take actions to, let's say, extrapolate these values and put them in action and manifest them, isn't there also a small part, external circumstances, that may affect or may traumatize us about the importance of values, or what's really a value. I can give you an example.
Mhm.
Someone who values honesty, and being honest in some time in his life, and then this is not working to his favor. Or someone who values integrity and living in an environment where integrity is not foundational, then this makes you feel like an outlier, an outcast, and you want to, then comes the instinct of survival, so you have to adapt your values. So I can understand how we come in this life with some values, how important is to work for those values, but how do we treat external circumstances and environments that affect us?
Well, we come with our own values and needs. Okay, let's say that we are each one of us is a unit, but each one of us is not an island. So, as you correctly said, we move and we live in groups, in teams, in communities, in workplaces. So our own values, okay, interact with the values of those around us, of the organizations that we serve. And there is often the case that there are mismatches. So it's very likely that if you value honesty and you live in an environment where there is a lot of backstabbing and politics and you hate being there because you hate people who are not honest and who are deceivers, there you will feel that you will feel that you don't belong there. As you said, you will feel that you are not in a safe space because you cannot function as the authentic person that you are. There you have two choices, I say, and we always presume that our values are static in a given time to have this conversation. So your choices are either you do what you can to stop others treading on your values. So, and that's a discussion we can have there, or you press the exit button and you leave and you place yourself in a new environment where let's say it's a workplace, to be more specific, not to get lost in the ether about values and these things. So let's say, take a workplace. Let's say my values are honesty and integrity. Okay, and in the workplace there is a lot of politics, backstabbing, gossip, and these things. People don't value me, they delegate things to me, and they don't respect my work-life balance. So you sense that in your workplace, behaviors and people are intruding into the space of your values. Okay, let's say you have that situation. You have two choices, I believe, at least two choices. First one is to try to push back. So you try to make yourself more formidable and more respectable. So you try to push back towards the people or situations that intrude into your value space. The second choice is to leave. The third choice is to live in desperation, in desperation, which is not good, because if you allow people to violate your values for long, I feel that it's likely that you will become bitter and possibly depressed, and depending on your temperamental predisposition, you may even become resentful, and which is you become dark. So it's not a good deal to remain in a place where you feel that people are treading all over you and your values, because that's a recipe for a downward spiral in places which are not good. So, okay, once again, option A, I try to not to force my own values, okay? I try to protect myself, to set boundaries, and to strengthen those skills and abilities of mine which can help me integrate better in the environment, okay? The second is to leave sooner or later, which is problematic unless you are in a very specifically toxic, negative workplace, for example, which is like a sui generis, like it's bad on its own terms, but there is a problem in living, and I will tell you what. And once again, the third is to stay there. Like there is a proverbial story with a frog. Do you know this story with the frog?
No.
So if you take a frog and you boil a pot of water up to the boiling point, and you throw the frog in the pot, the frog will instantly jump out, reflexively, right? But if you place the frog in the pot and you start slowly and gradually increasing the temperature, gradually, then you can bring the water to the same temperature, the boiling temperature, and the frog will be unable to move, and it will die, but it will be unable to move because the frog becomes accustomed to the gradual infringement of the high temperature in his own temperature or her own temperature. So the same thing if you are in a work environment where you feel that your values, okay, this person is bullying me, or this person is mean to me, or this person doesn't respect that I have a life outside work and pushing me little by little. It's like slowly raising the knob of the temperature knob. So encroaching, slowly encroaching. At some point, if you do nothing, you become so weak that you will simply be a negative, depressed presence in the workplace, too weak to jump off the pot to leave the workplace. You'll be so weak and possibly so self-pitying and perhaps even self-hateful. You will be one of those people that gallop the organization that researchers, that workplaces say actively disengaged people, who are around 15% of the workplace. So you have people who are there actively disengaged. They are like bitter. They're like, they are happy when the organization fails, or there are some things. So it makes you wonder, why are these people, not all of them, but some of these people are people who gave up on trying to improve their situation in the workplace, like the frog, the proverbial frog that remained too long in the water and they are unable to move, too scared to leave because the change terrifies them. And also, they didn't follow option A that I told you that I'm going to come back to, which is try to improve try to push back, basically, try to develop the skills that I have to develop in order to be able to protect myself. That's a big conversation there that we can have.
The only word that has been sticking in my mind, listening to you, explaining how values interplay with the environment that we live and work, is balance. Not necessarily work-life balance, but balance in general. I think the ancient Greek philosophers had a better word called harmony. And we're talking about the harmony of space, the harmony of nature, the harmony of ours. We live in especially after COVID, I feel we live in a very polarized society. I'm pro-COVID, not pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine. I'm right, I'm left, hard right, hard left, labeling with all these concepts. I believe in AI, I'm scared of AI. I'm liberal, I'm conservative. I think there is better space for all humans to coexist and create and walk towards that bigger picture we called before vision and finding purpose in life. And it's about finding balance or harmony. What's your view on this?
You're very correct that we live in a world of polarity, where we always have and had, but it's much more manifest today because of the way that these polarities are expressed in the social media space. So it's all around us. We see manifestations of these polarities everywhere we look. And you are also very correct that one of the key words in manifesting this highly volatile world that is underpinned by tribal dynamics, political divergence, and unrest on many fronts. The right way to approach it is through the right way to approach balance. Balance is a word that has been thrown around for many decades and has many. It's a definitional matter as to what we mean by balance. And some people say it's work-life balance. You mentioned correctly that there is now an emphasis on harmony or integration. I believe all of these approaches have truths in them, but I have found lately that a better approach to balance is a different one. For me, balance of an individual, we start from the individual, because if you are strong, you are integrated as an individual, you are robust, you are developed to a degree that you can navigate this volatile space that you mentioned, with all these conversations, with all these polarities manifesting in many different ways. So the best way to navigate that safely is to strengthen yourself, not muscularly, to strengthen your character. And how do you strengthen your character? And then we move back to the values again, but not in the engineering field. Balance for me, okay, that's my hypothesis. Cannot tell you 100% what's for everyone, but for me, balance is the ability to build a character that reliably rests on a robust set of rights and obligations, rights, freedoms, and responsibilities. That's a very big discussion. So balance for me starts locally. It doesn't start in the workplace, whether the workplace fosters a balanced approach to work. It doesn't start with the community, whether the world is a balanced or a crazy place, but it starts from the individual. In what sense? That if the individual manages to work on a narrow path where they themselves are balanced, then they will be able to withstand the vicissitudes or the challenges or the life or the curveballs that each separate space will throw on them, whether this is called family, community, work, society, the world, the economy, whatever. So the emphasis should be, in my view, on the individual. That's why I said in the beginning that, in my estimation, the proper vision should be to build a plan towards your ideal self. And the ideal self, I always mean it with reference to a person of character, a person of personal balance. So, going back to balance, what do we mean by this healthy combination of rights or abilities or freedoms and responsibilities and duties. I wrote recently a blog called The Balance Sheet of Life. Balance Sheet of Life. So on the one end of the scale, you place your credits, like your gifts, your talents, your opportunities, your possibilities, your wealth, whatever. So that's your credits. That's your gift. Okay, that's your artistic inclination. That's your ability to withstand suffering, your ability to So on the other hand, you have your debts. What are your debts? Your debts are your commitments. They are your limitations, your constraints. They are your duties. Okay, so this may sound a bit like fatherly advice, but it's not. So a person who is full of credits, so full of opportunities, skills, tools, resources, money, talents, but who has no load to, who doesn't have a load to carry, like doesn't have any duties, doesn't have any commitments, any limitations, any constraints, doesn't have any debts, will be off-balanced. That's the balance for me. If your life lacks limitation, we can use many synonyms: limitation, constraint, duty, obligations, responsibilities. Okay, then you are off balance, because then you will become complacent. You will indulge in comfort to such an extent that you will lose your nerve. And remember, in the beginning we said that if you don't have an aim or a direction, you will sink in the quicksand of entropy. So if you have too many rights, talents, gifts, money, resources, skills, unless you are a monster of conscientiousness, so you are so self-disciplined and driven, most likely that will lead you to laziness, boredom, and entropy. So that's a recipe for disaster. On the other end of the spectrum, if your life is full of debts, responsibilities, commitments, health issues, you have relatives who suffer, you are overburdened at work in your workplace, and everything is tilted towards the debt of the balance sheet, you will burn out. You will live in anxiety, fear, insecurity, your immune system will plummet, and you will burn out. So, because we are creatures of both debts and credits, we are born to carry a load. We are explorers, I would say, to an extent. We need to keep moving, so we need to keep aiming. It's in our nature to keep wanting to expand, to keep wanting to expand our map, to find more resources, to find this. We are mission-bearing creatures, okay? We have to have the balance. We have to have both the credit and the debit. So going back to the family, you asked me before, what's the family? A commitment to a family, or a commitment to, let's say, a long-term relationship. As is the commitment to friends, as is the commitment to some communal contribution that you may do, as is your commitment to work, as is your commitment to your dog. Okay, all these commitments fulfill the debt aspect of the scale that we set. Okay, and these are necessary. And without commitment, so without limitation, without constraint, you have no balance. And it's the same with whatever you do in life. I mentioned in the creativity part of my book that creativity requires improvisation and structure. It requires freedom and constraint. Okay? The same with life. What is vision and what is purpose? Vision and purpose is a commitment. You see, you can place vision and purpose on one side of the scale of what we call balance. Why? Because if you say that my purpose is to achieve X, let's say to become one of the most successful podcast hosts in Cyprus, right? Let's say that's your vision. I'm not saying that it is, but let's say that my vision is to become the best podcast host, okay? That's a commitment, and it's also a limitation, and it's also a constraint. Why? Because to decide that this is my vision, it means that I simultaneously decide that everything else is not my vision. So in economics, it's an opportunity cost. Okay? Does it make sense?
Yes.
So vision and purpose are necessary because they help you maintain the balance on the balance sheet of life that I mentioned. So it helps you balance out your opportunities and your responsibilities.
Philippos, I have a yes or no question to you.
Of course, yeah.
That's been in my mind all this time, hearing how, I mean, it was very nice how you put all this together. You connected the balance and the vision and purpose we were talking before with the values.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe in God?
That's a very good question.
It's a yes or no.
Yes, I believe in God.
You are talking before about balance.
Mm-hmm.
And how people should find balance in this narrow path and in this successful route to accomplish their vision and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And then you talked about community and society, and then about the world and maybe nature and how we protect Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Where is God in these levels? We have the person that tries to create this balanced life according to his values, walking towards this ultimate purpose. Then you have society working together for a common goal, being in a balanced society, having shared values. Then outside society, outside communities, where you have different levels, a country, continent, the whole world. Where is God hidden in all of this?
You do understand that this question requires 3 podcasts. Okay, let's try to tackle it. Okay, God, the topic of God has it's a definitional point as well as to what one means by God. But I would say that to say that you believe in God, it means that you take a leap of faith. Because otherwise you wouldn't believe in God, you would know God. So you believe necessarily includes an element of faith. And faith necessarily veers outside the space of scientific knowledge, okay? So whatever I'm going to say now is part of my belief. This is what I mean. We cannot know. Otherwise, we would know. We wouldn't believe. Does it make sense? And belief, by definition, includes an element of faith. And faith means we haven't connected all the dots, and that we complete the dots arbitrarily through our faith to complete the picture. Okay, that's a small intro into that topic of God. That's why believing in God is a deeply personal thing and a personal decision. It's a decision. You decide to believe in God. Okay, you don't automatically inherit a belief in God, although you can be socially brought in a world that believes in God. I believe deep down it's a decision. You decide whether or not you believe or not. Okay. So God, if one takes the omnipresent, omniscient, version of God, God is everywhere, in a sense. Now, whether or not this complies with the anthropomorphic version or perception of God, that's a different story, because people tend to attribute anthropomorphic features and agency to divine concepts. But God does not necessarily have an anthropomorphic presence.
In my mind,
Symbolically, various religions represent God or divine agents through anthropomorphic.
In my mind is what we said before, that you're absolutely right. I fully relate what you have said is a decision. Talking about myself, being raised in a very liberal family, I had the opportunity to decide and not being brought with, yes, you believe in this and you're a member of this church or you believe in this religion. I had the opportunity to decide, I agree with you, God is more than the biblical God, is more than that. And it's what we said before, it's the harmony of living a balanced life. Like when you're in this idle stage in your life where everything seems, balanced, and I think you can feel this magical power, energy. I don't know how people could define it. And I think it's connected at the beginning of this podcast when we're talking about our ancestors, that they were in a continuous move and they were trying to find more and be adventurous and create a story and organized in groups and work for a common mission. And I think they had also their own understanding of what is God, and being there static, scared, was putting them in a very unbalanced and non-harmonious situation. And actually this constant way of finding things, so it's like it's our constant let's say journey towards finding God, let's say.
Well, you touched on many interesting points there which can be delineated. I will pick one. In a sense, anthropologically, okay, there is a strong hypothesis that morality emerged out of evolution. So I'll try to make it a bit short, not to get sidetracked. But so morality, let's say, the rules that individuals within a group apply so as to remain cohesive. For example, free riders who sort of disrupt the harmony of a group are expelled. That's a moral rule, to keep the cohesion, because groups competed with other groups. So nomadic tribes competed with other tribes. So it was important for groups to survive as groups to remain cohesive. And morality, that hypothesis poses, and it's a compelling one, emerged out of that necessity to keep the group cohesive. Now, that morality, one can see it as the voice of the group. So, what is right and what is wrong within a group, okay, because of the what we said in the beginning of the robust cognitive abilities of sapiens, okay, which is what led them to part from the ape ancestors. So that cognitive ability, the ability to abstract, basically took that emergent morality, like the moral rules in the group, what to do, what not to steal, not to adultery, not to be disloyal, and these moral rules that develop as a survival mechanism for a tribe, this became abstracted, okay, in a sort of an emergent ethic. Okay, so gradually over millennia, these moral rules became identified with a voice that was telling those moral truths, like or spelling those moral truths, what is right from what is wrong. So everyone was following these oral moral rules as if they were somewhere objectively codified. Okay? So I'm trying to show the evolutionary explanation of God, one of the hypotheses. Over many millennia, this voice, let's say, in inverted commas, became identified with the voice of goodness. So the people of various civilizations which developed similar moral codes came to see that this voice of the group, of the society, telling what's right from what's wrong, is like a God, like it's like somebody saying what's right and what's wrong. So the voice of the tribe eventually became identified with the voice of somebody transcended. And okay, so we have these moral rules are like, it's as if they are observed by something outside the group. So this abstraction, like a God, so these moral rules are imposed by something like a God, so the totality of all individual consciousness became God. Does it make sense? So God, according to this theory, was the eventual emergence of an abstract transcendent entity that reflected cumulatively the moral rules of the particular group. And it's as if the group listens to itself through an entity that was an anthropomorphized projection of the group. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So that's a secular slash evolutionary slash scientific hypothesis as to why there is a God. And why there is a God, okay, that's the monotheistic aspect of God. There are also polytheistic, that's a different topic, but it's related. So that's one angle as to why there is God and why we follow God.
In my mind,
Yeah.
how at least I managed to put it into perspective or to rationalize it, God or reaching this harmonious stage is directly related with the notion of happiness. For me, the simpler definition of happiness is when you are in a situation where it's so idle. It's like reaching serenity. You're not worried about daily things. You're not worried about the future. You're not scared of, death or other, questions that and thoughts that are coming and upset our daily lives. And I want to thank you for giving me this amazing book, The Marvel of Happiness. You have deconstructed in your own way what happiness is, and through your own journey. And I have to tell you something. I love reading books, and reading a book for me it's very important because, as we touched before on the issue of values, for me my biggest value is learning and growing. Okay, and I love reading books. My biggest weakness is that I don't remember every little page or every chapter of a book, but I always keep a phrase from each book. And I have to admit that your book, with almost 350 footnotes, has managed to travel me from Aristoteles to Marcus Aurelius, from Plato to modern philosophers like Harari. And I don't know if it's gonna sound like hybris to these great writers, but this book is the book of books, if I could call it. And I wanted to share this last topic of our podcast to discuss about this subject and happiness. So if I could start with a very open-ended question.
Sure.
What is happiness for you, Philippos?
For me, well, happiness is that okay, happiness. I would say that it's the ability to integrate yourself with your environment in a harmonious and flourishing manner. When I say environment, I mean the community, the family. So the ability to integrate yourself in a harmonious and flourishing manner. So the flourishing also alludes to the growth aspect that you said. The harmonious alludes to the joy aspect that you mentioned. That's a definition that just came up now. Maybe it's for another book.
When I said before about these little phrases and little moments from each book, what really stuck with me, at one page, you said that a friend of yours gave you the most beautiful definition and explanation of happiness. You know my passion about sea, right? You know that I like diving, and he said that happiness is like the blue sea. You look at it, it's so beautiful, so colorful, different variations of blue. But once you reach it and once you take it in your hand, it's so transparent. So how do we understand happiness? By feeling fulfilled, by understanding what it is, and without the pressure or the let's say weakness of always having it around us and feeling it.
That's a great question, and I love how you circle around, because you know give me the opportunity to tie the whole discussion to the beginning, which we began. Okay, so I'm placing a post-it on the point you made about the blue color of the blue color of the sea. Like the sea is there, it's blue, but the moment you try to grasp the blue, it evaporates. Like so. Now, in the beginning of our talk, I mentioned that we are bipedal, we are mobile creatures. So it's in our destiny to be always striving. So whether or not we realize it, we always strive. even if we stay home doing nothing, it is because, in part, we strive for peace and tranquility. So, we, as creatures, we are meant to be striving for something. We are meant to be striving for that blue, and we are meant to be grasping the blue, and then for the blue to disappear, and then to aim for the next blue. So we are meant to be yearning, hoping, striving, aiming. It's in our nature. And it's also good to do so, as I said before, because we want to counter entropy, which is inevitable. So on the one hand, this can be a pessimistic message in the sense that, but if whatever we strive for vanishes or disappears or dissipates, so whatever we accomplish, so the satisfaction of accomplishment always dissipates, one might say that's a pessimistic or a Sisyphean. It's like the Sisyphean paradigm, when you push the boulder up the hill and then it's a new hill. So there is a Sisyphean dimension to the pursuit of happiness, okay? And some people say it's part of the religious people say it's part of the fall of man and woman from paradise, that God placed us in this Sisyphean mode of seeking for reunification and redemption. Anyway, that's a side note. So on the one hand, we have this transient, this limited, this eternal pursuit for completion and this eternal lack that we experience. On the other hand, however, I believe that if we orient ourselves properly in life and we place on top the highest value that we can, which is, in my view, as I mentioned before, it should be a value about what kind of person we want to be and become. If we manage to do that and we get that point as our northern star, like something that is noble, worthwhile, so, which is always about the character we want to become, remember, and the abilities we want to develop. And then we we second everything else as subsidiary goals or aims or aspirations. Then we should be able to embark on a journey that, whilst being characterized by this sequence of always dissipating and moving goalposts, nevertheless, because our northern star is set correctly, the journey will be never ending. Because to set as your goal to be, let's say, a noble, a good and productive person, that's a star that you will never attain. But in the process of moving towards that direction, you will actualize the best version of yourself and you will accumulate a web of experience that I'm sure will make the journey worthwhile. So that, in a nutshell, I think is my conception of what the path towards fulfillment should be like.
In Greek, happiness is ευτυχία, so being lucky. And I think being on a pursuit of happiness, or as we said at the beginning, finding our vision and purpose, is quite a challenging. But this is the beauty of the journey, I think. This is the beauty of the journey that comes from the insight that we're always striving to find what makes us fulfilled. So I am a believer that defining happiness is very difficult. But what's easier is to identify what is not happiness.
That's a great point.
So there are a lot of myths about happiness. And one of the greatest myth, in my opinion, is that having a lot of money and being successful makes you happy.
All right. That's the big one, isn't it? That one. Okay. It's the first myth that I mentioned in the book. By the way, the myths do not mean that they don't... So when I say that something is a myth, I mean that that is only part of the story, part of the truth. So money matters, but it doesn't matter as much as we think. So, okay, money and success help us satisfy some of our fundamental needs. So money help you feel secure because you can buy food. You can bring a roof over your head. These days it's difficult, but let's say that you can. And combined with success, you also satisfy your sense of belonging. You're recognized, whether by your peers, and then maybe you can also get out in the world, find somebody to have a long-term connection with. So all these things matter, but they themselves are not sufficient. They do not provide the acid test for happiness.
These remind me of Spinoza in one of his great stories. He says that, yes, money matters, fame matters, health matters, but all these things are luxuries. So you should be happy and lucky that you have them, but don't depend on them. If you depend on money, if you depend on fame, if you depend on health, sometimes in your life you will be missing them or missing the level of how much money you need to be happy. It's like the story of the fisherman who goes and picks the biggest fish ever in his life, and he's happier than the senior lawyer of a big law firm that last year made $1 million in profits and this year made 950,000. And he's desperate and he's miserable because he got less money this year, whereas the fisherman is the happiest person in the world for getting the biggest, fish.
That's exactly right. It boils down to your space and your own personal circumstances. So it's all a matter of comparison. Money statistically, there are surveys that I mentioned in the book that show that up to a certain level where your fundamental needs and basic desires are met, then there is a correlation between happiness and money. And as you correctly said, if there is such thing as misery as well. So if you are poor, you're much more likely to be unhappy and to suffer, because then you cannot even meet your basic needs. So let's not be too romantic about that money doesn't matter. Money matters. But from a certain degree onwards, I've read somewhere that the maximum, so if you reach up to 70K, as per that survey, per year, then from that point onward, the multiplication of your wealth does not carry with it the multiplication of your happiness. Then there is a completely different landscape, emotional landscape, over the point where you meet your financial needs.
Is what you said before about the balance of the
Exactly.
credit and the debts. To make so much money, it means you spend so much time at work and you're missing out from other moments in your life. That
exactly,
if you're so committed in work that you make more money, maybe the weight that you give in that extra money is significantly lower in value than the big debt of spending so much time. So it's all about finding the right balance.
Money serves a multitude of purposes. It can help you satisfy your needs. It can signal that you are doing well, so it satisfies your value. Let's say if you value prestige and success, money is an indicator that you are. So if money can be an indicator that some of your values are met. So let's not denigrate money. But you are correct that it's just one piece of the puzzle. Well, in the book, basically if I can draw a summary, because it's not easy to do so, but I think I can. I mean, Marvel is an acronym that I use. M stands for meaning and purpose. Basically, I use them together. So meaning, you can say that doing something meaningful equals striving for something and carrying a load, like having an aim, a vision, a purpose, and experiencing struggle to attain it. And the more noble and the more good, let's say, the aim is, so the less selfish it is, let's say, then the more likely you are to have meaning and purpose. So the nobler your aim is. And when I say noble, I mean in terms of contribution to yourself, your family, your community, that's what I mean. So you bring something and you share it with the world, the better is for your journey. So we have meaning. Aside of money, that we said that is important, but up to a degree. Then Marvel stands for meaning. So doing things that matter. And then A stands for autonomy. Is interchangeable with agency. Autonomy and agency go hand in hand. What I mean is that we need to have I think it helps to be authentic, to follow our own voice, to remain authentic to our values, hence the values, the V. So to be able to take our own decisions and suffer the mistakes and learn from them, the learning, the L. So agency and autonomy are important because we human beings, we love freedom. We love the ability to be ourselves. Okay, autonomy. Then R follows A, naturally follows A, is relatedness. So autonomy is about the integrity of the individual, the authenticity, the ability to be themselves, to be true to their own personal values, okay? Autonomy is about the I, the individual. So relatedness is that they need to belong, to interact, to have connections, to belong to a group. And there, the importance is to cultivate relationships, to value, to demystify. Sometimes we say, I want to become isolated, go to a cave and lock myself in and stay at home forever. But that's not ideal because we are social beings. So relatedness is about our social nature and the fact that it's important for us to feel that we exist in a space where we have people we can rely on, whether these are our friends, our long-term partner, our family, our kids, our community. So relatedness is about that, about the need to be a gardener of our own social garden, so to speak, to keep watering those connections that we want to keep flourishing, knowing that because of the law of entropy we said earlier, which applies to everything, knowing that social connections which are left unnurtured will wither by default. So relatedness, once again, I'm going back to it. So while the individual integrity and authenticity is important, the individual's location within a social space is necessary. So we choose consciously what connections we value most, and we consciously and deliberately keep fostering them. Maybe it's our parents, maybe it's our brothers and sisters, maybe it's our spouse, it's our kids, it's our friends, it's our colleagues. So we consciously keep fostering the relationships that we want because we recognize that the law of entropy will apply to those that we don't foster and those bonds will weaken. And because as a gardener, you cannot water all plants at the same time, it's impossible. You have to orient yourselves towards those relationships that you truly value, and that you want to keep fostering. So that's the idea of relatedness. You keep fostering your social connections, your business connections, your familial connections, because you need them. That's the point. You need the integration. Autonomy within the social space. You need the integration. Then after R, we've covered values, which they are all related. So values, be true to your values. Find your values. Identify your values. Prioritize your values and place those that are higher on top, which, as I said, most relate to what kind of person you want to become. Values. Find ways to negotiate your own values with the values of those around you, whether in the professional space or society or your family, your friends. So find a way to dance with others. The easier way is to press the exit button and go in a cave or lock yourself in your house and say, but the problem is that you don't get any better by doing that. So values. Orient yourself properly by finding your northern star. So find your highest value. Okay, find out or decide who you want to be, which should be your highest value. Then experience, which is of course the idea that autonomy and freedom is not enough. You need, I believe that a positive engagement in life is necessary. Like life is to be lived is the Theodore Roosevelt quote that I use in the beginning of the chapter. So the people that we admire are those in the arena. So if you ask me, and if I ask you, whom do we admire? Who do you admire? I bet that is going to be a person who is in the arena, in the experience. So a person who lives, not a person who withdraws and locks themselves in a safe walled enclosure. Okay, so so experience is about embracing, pursuing a life of experiences, of mistakes, of learning, of growth, but also living life, living in nature, living with, collecting experiences. Whether it's what you do, you love the ocean, which is a vast expanse of unexplored territory. I mean, that's experience, okay? And the twin of experience, learning, because you learn by experience. And as Aristotle said, I believe, I will paraphrase, of course, that the greatest teacher is experience. So the greatest way to learn is through experience. So we learn by the things we cannot learn by learning. We learn by doing. But that's one part of the story. Learning itself, so a conscious decision to learn, which is one of your values. So to actually engage in learning, whether it's through a course, whether it's through communicating with others and learning from each other. So you expand, which is a great way to learn. Talking with people, socializing. So by engaging in new projects, by stepping outside your comfort zone, by trying out new things. So learning and experience go hand in hand. And by having all these components, so pursuing what's meaningful, having the courage to make our own choices, while remaining integrated with the world, because we are social beings, so fulfilling our need for relatedness, being true to our own values and making an effort to negotiate our values with the values of those around us, so dancing and sort of coordinating our personal values with the values of the environment within we live, and also by engaging in stimulating experience and learning opportunities, I believe we are on the right path to a fulfilling life.
Amazing. That's a very. I like the way that everything, as we said at the beginning, moves. So life, like everything. I mean, now just came to my mind. Even the Earth is moving, and the stars are moving. The space is moving. This entropy, as you said, that we're in a constant moving journey. And I like the circular approach. I never liked liked these methods of having a good life in a linear way. Doing going to study, getting a good job, getting married, having a family. Like it's like A, B, C, D stages. It's not like that. It's a circular way of looking at things. And as you said, finding meaning in our life by our own choices as individuals, strong autonomous individuals, in our communities, being aligned with our values, sticking to our values and to the values of the communities, putting them into action through experiences, by growing through the experiences, and learning, arriving into meaningful stories or insights, as we might call it, pun intended, with this podcast name, Insight Minds. So Philippos, thanks a lot for finding the time to share your insights through this marvelous journey that you have from, as we said at the beginning, reaching the Everest of every young Cypriot lawyer, but realizing that at the top is not happiness, but happiness is everywhere, and you are in this constant journey of identifying the answers to these questions that have been here for all these ages and sharing them with us. Thank you, Philippos.
My pleasure, and I would say simply that such conversations truly make me happy.
Thank you, Philippos.